that right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Children's Cabinet meeting. There we go. My screen went kind of blank for a minute. Everybody okay now? All right. We have before us copies of the June 3rd and the June 24th minutes. Is there a motion to approve these, or are there additions or corrections to be made?
This is Delise, and I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Delise. Is there a second?
Deanna, I'll second.
All right, I got Deanna on that. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, the motion is to approve. All in favor? Let's see, I've got two members that I can't see. So if you guys will unmute your phone, Senator and Dr. Smith, will hear from everybody then. Thank you. All in favor? All in favor of the minutes, say aye.
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 All right, I heard 5 ayes. Madam Secretary, if you'd record that. Actually heard 6, including my own. All right. We've approved the minutes. Melissa, you want to talk to us about the Dolly Parton Advisory Board?
Yes, this should be a pretty simple item. At our June 3rd meeting, if you recall, we approved a recommendation to form an advisory committee to assist the cabinet in its role as the statewide lead for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library project. So we have worked to put a slate together of folks to join this advisory committee to assist us. The first task is helping with a game plan with regard to the other recommendation that the cabinet approved, which is to propose the formation of a 501c3 nonprofit entity, the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library of Kansas, that would allow us to fulfill the full responsibility that the Dollywood Foundation requires of the state lead. So that is one component. We also would benefit from an advisory committee that helps us with private sector fundraising to help grow support for the program, give us a rainy day fund, and the ability to provide some resources when local affiliates might be struggling, or just ensuring that children that get signed up don't ever get bumped off because there's a sudden loss of funding at the state level. So it'll be a group that meets, I envision several meetings kind of front loaded in the fall to help us get the nonprofit proposal shaped up, because it is something that we will need to work with the legislature on, and we need to be ready for that. But then generally this will be a group that has quarterly meetings to help us keep things going. So Lindsay, you can go to the next slide. It has the slate. We're starting off with a small but mighty team. We will continue to add members as we go. I don't think this needs to be a terribly large group, but this is the core group. And Deanne, I appreciate you volunteering to serve as the cabinet's member. Representative Waymaster was the original lawmaker who sought to add this into the budget and make it a priority for the state. So we welcome his participation in this. Betsy Waring from the Dane G. Hansen Family Foundation out in Western Kansas represents one of the largest local affiliate programs that operates, and so we welcome her willingness to join the board. Scott Hall represents the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, and will be really instrumental in helping us connect to some of the the corporations and big foundations in that they interface with. We've got some great leads to help with that private sector support side of things. He's also been a longtime champion of the library. When I invited him to join, he shared that he has gone door to door to help sign families up. So this is a project that is near and dear to his heart. Nancy Wallerstein, I realize I left off the rest of the description. She's a Johnson Countyan who has just recently ended a tenure on the board of the Head Start program in the area. She was term limited off the board, but I think again, will be a good champion in that area as we seek to bring Johnson County groups on board to bring the program to a county that currently doesn't have it and desperately needs it. Has 23,000 potentially eligible kids at the moment. So we welcome Nancy's willingness to serve. Lisa Gleason from United Way of Reno County is another person who is involved as a local affiliate and a huge champion of the program, and reached out to volunteer to serve with us. And then we were advised by the Dollywood Foundation. It always makes good sense to have the governor's office it represented. So Zach Vincent from their office, whose policy portfolio it includes our children's cabinet and other early childhood and children's issues. So we are really pleased to have a well-rounded board. As I said, I will continue to seek to cultivate membership. I'd love to see maybe one or two business representatives added. If any other cabinet members are interested and willing to give time to this, you are welcome to join the effort. And I would say to the public watching, we will endeavor to make sure that this committee and its activities represent the best interests of Kansans all across the state. So the ask is simply to approve the membership so that we can get to work scheduling a meeting and get the work of this committee going. But before we ask for that vote, I would entertain any questions or discussion from the board.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, I don't hear any. So is there a motion to approve? I assume additional people might be brought from time to time, but
we'll bring them
this
as
is the initial board.
The initial board, yes.
This
Okay.
Monica is so moved.
Thank you, Monica. Is there a second?
I second that. Senator Erickson.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Again, any comments or questions?
Melissa or Kim, do I need to abstain from the vote since I'm part of the slate?
That's a great question. Let's say yes, we have enough of a quorum without your vote. I appreciate you thinking of that.
No problem.
I don't know if it's a conflict of interest when you're volunteering to serve.
Yeah,
We'll treat it as such out of an abundance of caution. So,
Sounds
all
great.
right, thanks for the question. All right, I will call roll then. Senator Erickson,
Yes.
Lietta, I don't think she's on. Deanne is abstaining. Delise,
Yes.
Monica,
Yes.
Terry Rice, I don't see her. Dr. Smith,
Yes.
I don't see John. And I will vote yes. So the motion carried.
Thank
It looks
you.
like a really good group to get started with. Looks great. Okay, Amy, you're up next with things about the Child Abuse Prevention Grant renewal.
Kim,
Oh.
this is, sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, the agenda and the slides are out of sync. So let's go ahead and let,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. No, you were going off the agenda, which I apologize for the mismatch, but let's introduce Dr. Schepperman from WSU.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Lynn.
Good morning. I'm going to share my slides. Let's see. Can you see my? Can everyone see my slides now? Okay, great. I want to start by just, this is my favorite time of year, the most exciting time of year for me. It's very, very intense because we have less than 2 months to clean all of this data and screen it and analyze it. But it's also really exciting to me to be able to look and see the progress that the programs have made and just dig deep into the data. So I'm really grateful to be able to do this. And I'm really grateful to the Children's Cabinet because I feel like it's a real honor to be a part of a group that is so dedicated to making Kansas a better place for children and families. And I just want to express my gratitude for that. I also want to express my gratitude to the grantees and the families because collecting this data really gives us some valuable information, and the grantees have really worked with me to help me understand how I can be helpful to them. And sometimes I try something and it's a big fail and they're patient with me. And sometimes I'm able to provide them with things, information and data in ways that are really useful, because my goal is for them to love the data for what it can tell them to make their programming better, so that it's not just informing the cabinet, but that it is also informing the grantees on their programs. And I think that is really vital. And I will continue to try and not make so many mistakes, but also, we've had some hits and misses, and I appreciate their continuing to work with me. So the ECBG grant serves a wide range of needs in Kansas and is all the way from pregnant mothers and then children from 0 to 5 and then up to teen parents and then other parents. And there are a variety of different services. It's really designed to meet the needs of Kansas communities with the needs that they have in their individual communities rather than prescribing what they should be doing. This is a map of Kansas and the counties that are currently being served by block grantees. And we will dig a little deeper into the services and where they are in future slides. So this is the data primarily the data for the last year's evaluation. This is not a longitudinal study. We don't look at families over time or children over time. The children are served sometimes just for 1 year, sometimes for even less than a year. The risk factors have been established by the Children's Cabinet. So the first one is qualifying for free and or reduced price lunch. So economic struggles, families whose primary language is not English, children that are at risk or have developmental delays, migrant families, children without health insurance. Thankfully, that remains relatively low. So that makes me happy. Children that are in foster care, custody of a relative, or out of home placement or involved with DCF, caregivers that have less than a high school education, teen parents, families without stable housing, and if the custodial parent is unmarried. So this year we served 6,719 children, and the risk factors associated with the children are, we had 7% that were in the foster care system or out of home. We had, as I said, we remain low with only 4% of the children without health insurance. 24% of the children did not speak English as their first language, and 42% of these children had 3 or more risk factors. And then this year I've broken down the children that are at risk or have an established developmental delay. So the at risk are children that have indicators of risk on their ages and stages questionnaires, those screeners that we use. And then the 18% are children that have an established developmental delay and are receiving services. feel free if at any time anyone has a question to stop me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We served 5,968 families. Almost half of them were unmarried, about 6% teen parents, which is a 1% higher than the statewide average. 1% migrant families, 4% without stable housing, 69% free and reduced lunch. The statewide free and reduced lunch percentage is 46. And then 28% that their primary language is not English spoken in the home. 12% of the caregivers had less than a high school education, and 56% made less than $40,000 a year. So the first thing we're going to talk about is early identification, and that is the ages and stages questionnaires. They are screeners that are developed for each age group. There's many more for the younger ages because development happens so quickly that it's really essential that we screen frequently for younger children. So what we try to do is encourage early and frequent screening, which encourages early intervention, and that is very predictive of better long-term outcomes and lower cost. For these screenings are used to educate parents. And this is a new aspect that I put in here because I wanted to focus a little bit this year on how the data is being used by the grantees. So you'll see some utilization slides scattered throughout. So the way that the ages and stages questionnaires are used is that they're used frequently to help educate parents, because some parents really don't have an accurate understanding of what a child should be doing for their age. And that's really essential for good parenting. It's also a way to address and inform concerns by either a parent or a teacher. It allows for activities to be provided if there are delays or indications that there may be delays. And it allows for referrals, which are essential. So here are our ages and stages questionnaire results. You can see that overall, we don't have really high rates of risk or those in the monitoring, which means there is an indication of risk, but it's not enough to make a referral yet. But you can also see that the fine motor skills area is the highest risk. And then we also have some risk in social emotional. Overall, almost half, 49% of the children screened had some indication of risk.
This is Senator Erickson. Would it be possible to see that screener, to get a copy of the screener rather than just the results?
Well, there's 18, I think. There's one for each developmental stage. I can certainly send them to you. I don't know if you want to pick an age or if you want them all. They have questions in each category to assess each domain, and they're based on an extensive amount of research on that stage and the development of those skills.
Yeah, I would appreciate at least having those and then being able to refer to those. And I also had a real quick question. During COVID, when parents weren't necessarily reporting for free and reduced lunch, was there an alternative way of identifying that during that time when schools weren't collecting that data?
Because these children aren't primarily in public schools, we just use that they meet the same criterion. So they don't have to qualify in a school district. We just use the income criterion that is used for free and reduced. The programs screen families for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. And I can tell you, and Amanda could tell you more, but all of the local Part C programs now can give access, I believe, to the ages and stages questionnaires to the community. So the ECBG grantees will be using it. I'm not a part of that, so I don't know the details. I don't know if Amanda wants to speak to that.
I'd be glad to, everybody. So hello, I'm Amanda Peterson. I'm the Director of Early Childhood at the Kansas State Department of Education. And you all have heard, as part of our All In for Kansas Kids work, one area that was identified in the strategic plan was expanding access to developmental screenings across the state so that where you live didn't determine whether or not you had access to a tool like the Ages and Stages questionnaire. So as part of our statewide contract with Brooks Publishing, the publisher of the ASQ, the state has partnered, and since 2018, all incoming kindergarten students have been in schools where it's a requirement that they are screening using the ASQ. We've now expanded that as of 2020. All of our Part C programs in the state have access to that online infrastructure so that they're able to partner with community organizations to make screenings available without having to have all of those local programs bear the cost of the subscriptions. So we're really excited about that partnership and are really glad that we're going to be able to see even more families be able to access this tool.
Amanda, this is Melissa. Would you address if a parent does not wish their child to be screened using this tool, is that their right?
Yep, absolutely. Parents have the ability to opt out, and parents provide consent before they complete the questionnaire.
And I will also tell you that because we are becoming a state that has really wrapped families around the ability to use the ASQ, that the ECBG grantees have the option that they can not collect it if it's being collected somewhere else, so that we're not bombarding families. But frequent screening is really important, especially at those younger ages. I marvel, even though this is an area where I've worked for 20 years, that when I watch my granddaughter, who is almost 2, how much change there has taken place just in the last 6 months. And it really has brought home to me how important frequent screening is for younger children.
Lynn, before you move on, it might be useful to put the ASQ in context. Can you just give a description of the Common Measures Initiative and
Sure.
the timeline, how long the cabinet, when it was adopted and became our approach to things?
Okay, 9 years ago, I responded to a request for a proposal, and we were selected to work with the cabinet to select common measures. I've been told, and I can't find anything that indicates that this is not accurate, that we were the first state in the nation to have such a comprehensive statewide data system covering so many families. So what we did was look at all the different programming that was taking place across Kansas and sorted them into categories of service because they all have different names and we needed something to define them. And then we looked at what was going to be the least expensive, briefest measure to measure the outcomes associated with that programming. But because monitoring child development is so essential and early identification, the ages and stages were also added as a common measure. It is a screener that cannot be used as an outcome measure because there's a different assessment for each age group, and it is not designed to be used as an outcome assessment. So it's a common measure, but it isn't a common measure just for the greater good of monitoring child development. So the other measures, which we'll look at later, were selected because they are reliable, valid, and sensitive to change and had benchmarks.
Dr. Smith, I see your hand raised.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I did want to say that I've used Ages and Stages, and the information is only as good as how parents answer the questions. Sometimes I've had parents who they're not in a position of feeling like, I don't think something's wrong, or I don't want to admit that there might be something wrong with my child. So they might say, oh no, everything's fine, everything's good with how they answer the questions. And then as the child's developing, you're like, no, there's something that's just not coming together appropriately. So your information is only as good as how the parents answer the questions, and also making sure that they're answering honestly and truthfully, because that's how we try to gauge if there's children that are having any issues, concerns with their development, so we can get those things handled quickly and also get them into services quickly as well.
That's very true. And I think that one of the things that the grantees work really hard at is using this within the context of a relationship that they have with the families, so that they're able to have that question, kind of discussion about child development to help the parents really think about their responses.
Do we have any other questions before we move on?
Okay, so as you can see, fine motor is the highest risk area, and this has been something that we have been seeing over time. And so I became really curious and decided to do a deep dive. So we put together the last 6 years of ages and stages data and looked at fine motor skills. The red line is the national average of risk in fine motor. So if there's an indication of risk. And what you see here is the percentage of children at risk for a delay. So nationally, the average that they see is 19%. Now, this data that they have developed this on is from the early 2000s because they don't update it all that often. And to be honest, there isn't a whole lot of federal funding for measures research right now. And so when you look at the research in fine motor, it's very specific to subpopulations. But what we're seeing is that up until 2 years old, we have less risk for the most part than they do nationally. But once you hit 2 years old, children are showing more risk. This is something that I'm very curious about. When Amy and I do visits with the grantees, the consensus has been that, that children are using more touch screens and that may be impacting the fine motor skills, and that parents may be less willing to let them play with things that might get dirty or so I think it's concerning. And it's interesting, when we were visiting grantees, I had one grantee suggest to me that maybe we don't need fine motor skills anymore. That didn't really ring true to me, just because I feel like in my daily life I'm using my fine motor skills, but I started doing a little research. And there has been a decline, but it's been going on for a while because dental schools and medical schools are now having to offer remedial fine motor skill courses for their students. So this is a problem that is relatively pervasive. And Amanda, would you mind speaking to what you guys are going to be doing with your ASQ data? Because I know that there's going to be some work done on the data that's being collected.
Absolutely. So as I shared, we first required the kindergarten readiness snapshot tool, the ASQ, to be used for incoming kindergarten students in the fall of 2018. And when we're looking at the data that we have available from that initiative, it is largely for those older kids, right? Because it's children who are entering kindergarten. However, as we are rolling out the statewide system, that gives us the opportunity to more frequently review aggregate data. And as we discussed earlier, this is data that has been collected and is housed in programs across the state. It's de-identified in terms of the data that programs who are participating in the accounts that are operated by our Part C partners, those community-based partners. We at KSDE don't have the ability, as we're the ones who administer the statewide system, we don't have the ability to see the personally identifiable information for those entries. We are able to see aggregate statewide data. And so moving forward, our plan is to connect with the State Interagency Coordinating Council, which is the entity in the state that's responsible for advising the governor and the legislature and KDHE and KSDE on issues related to children who have or who are at risk of developmental delay, birth to 5. We'll be taking aggregate 6-month data where we're able to break down by age the domains, and we plan to take that to that group to review and thought partner twice per year. We're looking at doing that in September and then in January or February. So if anybody is interested in being part of those conversations or joining that meeting, they can reach out to Christy Cotton, who's responsible for supporting and facilitating the State Interagency Coordinating Council. Her email address is kcotton@ksde.org, and the State Interagency Coordinating Council meets on the third Friday of each month in the afternoon. Is that what you were hoping I would address, Lynn?
Yes,
Terrific.
thank you.
You're welcome. We're looking forward to it.
So as a result of this data, we have been working on some materials that grantees can use with families to help them enrich the fine motor activities at home. And we're also talking with grantees about activities in their individual programs that they can encourage to hopefully bring down our higher rate of fine motor risk. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on. So again, this year we looked at the impact of COVID on our early learning programs. 40% of them had to shut down at some point, and that affected 1,480 children. Only one closed permanently, and the number of weeks that they were closed or days ranged from a day to 4 weeks for most of them. We also looked at staff turnover because that has been a big problem this year, and it really was taking them a long time to fill vacant positions, 14 weeks on average, and they had a lot of turnover and they've been really struggling to fill those classrooms. 6 classrooms were closed permanently due to lack of staffing. And some of them had to close temporarily because of lack of staffing, and the most common was for 2 weeks. And 87 classrooms were closed temporarily due to that staff turnover. So I'd like you to use both of these as kind of a lens to look at the data through, because I can tell you that there are some grantee administrators who were in classrooms this early winter because they were so short-staffed that they had to fill in. So early learning in ECBG is a variety of different programs, and what I wanted to do was kind of give you an idea that this is not 5 separate programs, but really the early learning for children with special needs is pretty much separate. But the pre-K, the infrastructure, the 0 to 3 care and education, and the social emotional classroom consultation really are kind of woven together. And so they're not clear distinctions between these programs. There's a whole lot of blending. So here are the maps of the distribution of the different pre-K programs, and we will look at those as we look at the data, so you can see that those services are being provided in different communities based on the needs of the community. And here's the range of the numbers of children served by each one of the programs. So you can see that pre-K has the most children served, and the pre-K and early learning for children with special needs has the least, because that's really only in 2 counties. So first, we're going to look at social emotional classroom consultation, and you can see how that's distributed across the state. The measure we use is the DECA. It's a strengths-based measure that looks at attachment and relationships, self-regulation, and initiative. And we look at the percent of children on track from the fall to the spring, or from the beginning of services to the end. So we started the year with 74% of our children that were in these services on track, and moved up to 85%. So we don't expect to see a high percentage of children that are not on track at the beginning, just because these are classroom consultations. And so you don't expect many of the children. It's a small subpopulation of children that are having difficulty in this area. And we had an 11% increase this year. Next, we have an overview of early learning in Kansas. Just over half of the children in 0 to 3 care and education and pre-K were in classrooms that were serving them 40 or more hours per week. This is a 14% increase in full-time care from last year. So that makes me really happy, because I feel like that broad coverage of services is really more functional for families. The next component of early learning is the classroom observations, and these observations are really important for determining the quality of the classrooms. We look at the responsiveness of teacher-child relationships, and because that's very predictive of academic outcomes and social skills, and that serve and return relationship between the adults in the classroom and the children, because that has been found to be very predictive of good outcomes. We use the class second edition, which is a standardized, reliable, valid observational measure that's sensitive to change, and they use that data to coach teachers in their classrooms. Here you can see the pre-K, toddler, and infant class average scores by the subcategory. You can see that our averages are well above the benchmark in each one, and that about 3/4 of the classrooms in Kansas were observed to be high quality. And here you can see the progress over the year. So we started with 69% of our classrooms being high quality, and we moved up to 76. So we had that 7% increase. And I can tell you that we've done some additional analyses, and that when these classroom observations are grouped by quality and range, those teacher-student interactions are predictive of improvement in phonological awareness. So the better the classroom, the higher quality, the greater the gains for students in phonological awareness. And that is one of the key skills that is really important for these pre-K students. Next, we're going to look at the 0 to 3 early learning programs. So there are 2 groups of programs that are covered by this. So we have 0 to 3 care and education, and you can see the distribution of those programs. And then we have the early learning with children for children with special needs. We use the early communication indicators. And this slide is a little different because I am only looking at positive change. The reason for that is because 53% of these ECBG children that were served and assessed had an established developmental delay. So it's not appropriate to look at where they are as far as developmental norms. This measure looks at gestures, vocalizations, and single words and multiple words. So it covers the whole range from 0 to 3 as far as their communication by looking at the different aspects of communication. And you can see that we had 75% of the students that were assessed with the ECI had increases in their scores over the year. Next, we have the pre-K programs, and you can see the distribution of programs across the state here. So first we have language comprehension, and this is an essential skill because it allows us to draw inference from written and spoken language. Language comprehension is predictive of literacy and reading outcomes, and vocabulary is very predictive of the acquisition of new words. We use the MyIGD's literacy for this, and this component focuses on 2 subcomponents: picture naming. So a child would be shown a picture of a bear, and they're to name that. So they'd say bear, and they get the points for that. And then which one doesn't belong. It's very interesting to me that which one doesn't belong nationally is the most difficult subtest on the MyIGD's literacy, and yet in Kansas we do well on which one doesn't belong every year. So not quite sure. So they're shown a picture like the one you see with a bus, a butterfly, and a car, and they're to select which one doesn't belong to that grouping. Here you can see the change over time in language comprehension in the percent of children on track. So we started the year with 51% on track, and by the end of the year we were at 75%. So we had a 24% increase. And you can see we do well on language comprehension generally. Next, we have phonological awareness. This is really an essential skill because there is quite a bit of research. This is using materials for phonological awareness in general, not specific curriculum, is considered to be an evidence-based practice for pre-K. It's very essential and it's very predictive. In fact, it predicts all the way out to 3rd grade reading proficiency. And again, we're using the MyIGDs literacy. There's rhyming. So they would show the card and say cheese, bees, cat, and ask the child to pick the 2 that rhyme. Alliteration, they would say bear, cat, and then say buh, and have the child select which one starts with buh. And then sound identification, which is really related to letter identification, they would say buh and have the child show them which letter is associated with that sound. Our classrooms really struggled in phonological awareness this year. And I think that that is not particularly surprising. When I talked to the developer of the measure, she said that she's hearing from programs nationwide that they really didn't see a lot of progress. You can be a really good teacher in providing warm, nurturing relationships, but this is a skill that's above that. It's more difficult to teach. Also, we know that this is best delivered in frequent, brief, small group lessons. And when you're short-staffed and struggling to get by, that's less likely to happen. The other thing I can tell you is as you look at this 5 years of data, and you can see we started to really focus on it and make progress, and then COVID hit. That this year we have the children in this group there's 10% more of them that have 3 or more risk factors than there were in the 2017-2018 year. So we have much more risk in these children. So this is one of the data utilization slides. Kim, I want to apologize because I know you're colorblind, and the reason we use the colors we do is because the manufacturer uses them, so it's easier for the teachers to understand those colors. But I've actually been talking with them and they're thinking about changing their colors.
Well, these happen to be fine, Lynn. I don't know why. They're clear at the extremes of red and green, so I see them pretty good. So
Okay, good. I'm glad because I was a little worried about this. But what we do is we have a few years ago, I was looking at the data for the MyIGDs, and I just happened to notice that there was one school that they had one teacher that was just hitting it out of the park. She was doing great in all the phonological awareness subtests, and the rest of the classrooms were not. And I thought, I wonder what's going on in that classroom. And so we decided that we would, refers back to what I was talking about at the beginning, that we would have data coaching calls because I really want to help them use their data. So the first year you see the top slide, that's the benchmark. So you can see that classroom 1 had the most children that were at risk. The red is at risk. And we presented that information. But then I realized that's not the whole picture, because the range of scores you have in your classroom can also impact how difficult it is to address the needs of those children. So you can see below that that classroom had a really wide range of scores. And so that teacher has children that are at the high end that she needs to address their skills, but she also has children that are at the very floor of those skills. And so she needs to address a wide range. We also show them how they changed from fall to winter. And these conversations go on with, it depends on the grant. Sometimes it's grantees, sometimes it's coaches. And in some of the smaller ones, we even talk with the teachers individually. Then based on the suggestion of one of the grantees, we came up with a child level report. So these child level reports show how a child is doing overall so that a teacher can get a better picture. It also includes spark lines that show if the child's score increased or decreased or remained the same from fall to winter. And it shows how they're doing on the overall subcategories of phonemic awareness and language comprehension, so that they can really get a big picture of how those children are doing across the board with another visual. And then it also provides classroom information. So here you can see that with the phonemic awareness and language comprehension, there's only one child in that classroom that is not on track in all of those areas. Numeracy is also good, but it also gives them a visual so that the teacher can look at it and go, wow, I really probably need to really hit rhyming harder. So this is something that we now provide as well. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback that they're really liking these and that they're useful to them. Next, we have the 3 and 4-year-old numeracy. This is also the MyAIDs, and it includes oral counting, number naming, quantity comparison, and one-to-one correspondence counting. So the quantity comparison, they would show that and ask them which one has more, and the child would select the one that has more. One-to-one correspondence counting is not just counting, but being able to track counting the dots. That is one that children tend to struggle in at this age. And here you can see our data. We're not quite as high as we've been in past years, but we really have a large proportion of the students that are on track for that. And we had a 16% increase from fall. We tend to do well in numeracy in our programs year after year. Next, we're going to move to family services. So the family programs that we have are home visiting, parent education, case management, and mental and behavioral health. These programs vary in intensity based on the needs of the family, and they're selected based on the needs of the community. These programs have been found to ameliorate the impact of trauma and toxic stress. So these more intensive programs can really work with high-risk families. And they also positively impact some social emotional skills and brain development that is really essential at this age. And here you can see the distribution of the number of families served. So the most families were served with home visiting, but parent education was a close second. Because case management and mental and behavioral health are more intensive programs, those tend to be serving less families. And here you can see the geographic distribution of those programs. COVID had some impact on these parent education programs, but it wasn't nearly as great as the classroom programs. And we have staff turnover. This was an area that caused some struggles for the programs. So again, they had quite a gap while they were trying to fill vacant positions, a little bit less than the pre-K and childcare, but still 10 weeks was the average. And there were times that because of not having enough staffing, they were unable to have events or serve families. So when COVID happened, we had to shift because the measure that we were using for home visiting was an observational measure, and sometimes the home visits were being handled on Zoom calls. And so we shifted to the Parenting Stress Index. And this is the first time I've presented data on that. So it looks at parental distress, parent-child dysfunctional interaction, difficult children, and overall stress. And we saw a 3% decrease in stress for our home visiting programs. But I wanted to contextualize that for you. So we took 4 studies that had used this for home visiting research and 4 that had used it for parent education. You can see the dark blue dots, the small dots represent families. And so you can see that there's a wide range of scores, and that in the research, they saw a 4% increase. So we're very similar to that, where they saw a larger increase in the 10% for parent education. The parent education programs that were in this were much more intensive than the home visiting programs. But I just wanted to give you kind of a framework for looking at that 3%. You can see that many of the families are lower on the scale, and really you have to get up above 80 before you really see a lot of risk for families. Next, we have the KIPS. This is an observational measure for parent education programs. It looks at supportive, nurturing, positive parenting. And what we've got is the subcategories that are used that the KIPS measures. So we have relationship, promoting learning, supporting confidence, and then the overall. And you can see that we had increases in those skills across the board. So overall, we had an increase from 69% to 81% of the families that were above what is considered the line for positive parenting. This is another data utilization slide. We came up with these to help them understand the nuances of the details that I don't usually get into with you. And it's really interesting that I selected this one because when I presented this to the grantee, this was a program that was doing some parent education around literacy. So I wasn't really surprised that they were really doing well on certain strategies, but not on others. And I mentioned that to the grantee and she said, well, we can work on limits and consequences and supporting emotions. And it's interesting because this was last year's data and this year they are doing much better in those areas, even though this is a literacy program. So that's how we help them think about their data when we present them in this way. We also show them the change over time for their families and how they compare to other programs that are similar in the state. So overall, 6,719 children were served, 5,968 families. I would say the big things that you want to keep in mind are that 42% of these families had more than three or more risk factors. So that's a lot of risk. And we have seen in the past when we've divided the data up by risk factors that children that are in those families that have more risk are less likely to make gains. And 69% had free and reduced lunch. We saw some progress in language comprehension and social emotional and numeracy, but we did not see a lot of progress in phonological awareness. We did see progress for families as well. Next, I'm going to move on to CADE, the Communities Aligned in Early Development and Education. This is a program that is in just Wyandotte County. They will be part of the block grant next year, so they won't have a separate report. They served 660 children. They had a higher rate of children in foster care out of home placement at 11%, 3% without insurance, 26% whose first language was not English, and 44% with 3 or more risk factors. They had a very low percentage of children with established developmental delays, but then they had quite a few children, 38%, that had an indication of delay on the ASQ. 546 families were served. A little over half of them were unmarried, 5% teen parents, 11% with less than a high school education, 1% migrant families, 5% that were experiencing homelessness or lack of stable home, 60% free and reduced lunch, and 33% that English was not their primary language in the home, and 54% that made less than $40,000 annually. Here we have the ages and stages questionnaires for the CADE grant, and you can see again, they have more risk in the fine motor as well. Social emotional is a little bit better for the CADE, the children served by CADE. And generally they're very similar in that 45% of the children had some indication of risk. As far as the impact of COVID, Wyandotte County continues to be hit more severely than some of the other counties in Kansas. So 76% of their environments were shut down due to COVID. 488 children were impacted. 2% of those classrooms closed permanently and 75% closed temporarily. Those closures mostly ranged from a day to 4 weeks, with the average being 3 weeks. They also struggled with staff turnover, and that resulted in permanent closures of some classrooms and also temporary closures. And they, on average, took 12 weeks to fill vacant positions. Here you can see the number of children served in the individual programs. Most of the ECBG programs have literacy activities integrated into their programs rather than having it as a separate program. But CADE has a separate literacy activity program, so that's why they have that. Most of their children are served in pre-K and early learning by infrastructure supports. So here we have the DECA. Again, this is the strengths-based social, emotional, and resilience measure. They started with 80% of their children on track and moved up to 91%. Next, we have the class observations and the average scores. You can see that they struggled more to provide high quality care in the classrooms in CADE. So the biggest struggle was in the pre-K, with only 38% of those classrooms reaching high quality by the end of the year. So the way that the class observation is applied is they do a class observation in the fall. If they meet high quality, then they're not required to do a second one. If they don't meet high quality, they do coaching and try and meet high quality by the end of the year. So here you can see that they had 32% that were meeting high quality at the beginning of the year, and by the end they were up to 47%. So they did have a 15% increase. So those services are having an impact, but we'd like to see them retain teachers and see this move up. Next, we have the early communication indicator. And in this case, because only 3% of the children had an established developmental delay, we do look at the percentage on track. They had a 15% increase in children from the time 1 to time 2 measure. Next, we have language comprehension. And you can see that they started at 60% on track, moved to 64, and were at 73 by the end of the year, very similar to the ECBG programs with a 13% increase. Here we have phonological awareness. This is decreased in their programming every year. They're really struggling with this. And I think because they have more struggles with staffing, that can really contribute to this. So they had a 22% decrease in the percent of children on track by spring. I do want to point out that the assessment becomes more difficult as the year progresses because the expectation is the children will acquire those skills. And here we have numeracy, which looks much better. They started with 76% on track and got to 82% by the end of the year. So that was a 6% increase. And this year is looking even better than it has in the past. So overall, they served 660 children, 546 families. 44% of them had 3 or more risk factors. 60% free and reduced lunch. They had really good outcomes as far as early numeracy and language comprehension, but really struggled in phonological awareness and their class scores. They're also struggling with. That's all I have for you today. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Lynn, this is Monica.
Hi, Monica.
I just want to tell you again that there is no other early childhood project, or as far as I know, even a K-12 project that can produce this kind of information, this comprehensive, this meaningful to both the individual grantees and the funders. So kudos to you and all the folks in the field that collect it and make it understandable.
Well, thank you. I feel very privileged to be able to do this work, kid. I really care about Kansas, and I think all the grantees do and the cabinet does. So it's really wonderful to be able to do this.
This is Delise. I've got a question. First of all, I agree. This is amazing data. I think my favorite thing is that the teachers are able to then use the data to help direct the instruction with the kids. And we now know that phonemic awareness is, what that be now 22%. We now know that's a need that we have, and we've got to do something to fill that gap, right? So I think that the data is very useful in helping to drive what we're doing with the kids. If I looked at the map correctly, not all of our counties in Kansas are served by the ECBG grant, and this is just my ignorance. Can you explain to me kind of how that, what the reasoning behind that is? Is it because we don't have enough in the budget to cover all of the counties, or because there are other programs that are serving those counties, or other things? Thank
So,
you.
Lynn, this is Melissa. I probably should field this one because it speaks to the grant making process. It is, I mean, yes, we have a ceiling on the funding that we have to give. We do open a public process. We'll be talking about the early childhood block grant process next on our agenda. That is something we'll be discussing, but this is why we feel strongly about issuing a public RFP to allow programs to apply. But you know, sometimes it's lack of a program application to serve a certain area, and sometimes we just reach the limits of our funding capacity. So I think it's a combination of factors. We would love to be able to grow the program and make programs and services more universally available, but obviously there are constraints on that.
Thank you. That answers that question. I truly appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, and I did want to add one thing as far as the phonological awareness. Because we were unable to travel this year, we had travel funds. And so there's some curriculum that I know from teachers and from outcomes from ECBG, where classrooms that were doing really well in this area, that there's an easy to use curriculum. So we purchased that for any pre-K program that was interested, and also purchased a brief online training to introduce them. It's set up so it's really easy and that doesn't require a lot of teacher preparation. And so we're hoping to see the impact. We have seen over the last 2 years that the programs and classrooms that are using it have really seen great gains. So I'm hoping that that will be helpful.
Thank you. That's awesome. And again, I think that points to the fact that your day is doing what you hope your day is going to do, right? It pointed out something that was a need, and then you guys filled that void. So good job.
Thanks.
Any other
Any other
comments, questions? Well, thanks, Lynn. Appreciate it. It was thorough. Very interesting. Okay. I'm showing ECBG timeline review. Is that next?
Let's let the slides catch up a bit, or Lindsay?
Sorry, trying to get it loaded.
Yeah. Yeah, great. So that the request at our June meeting, Kim, your request to explore our grant award making process is really what this is based on. Our early childhood block grants is the request at our June meeting. We're having Kim, your request to explore our grant award making process is really what this is based on. Lindsay, I'm getting our early childhood block feedback is the request at our June meeting.
Is it better now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, my apologies.
That's okay. Kim, you noted that you know, an annual application competitive grant making process can be a high burden on programs that are struggling with the outside, like these have been some tough years, and it's hard to plan and staff and budget if your funding is annual in nature. And we do value long-term perspective when we are talking about investments in early care and education programs. So stability for grantees over time is important to us, as is the ability to be nimble and innovative and help support promising new projects. I think CADE is an example of that. We are always open and searching for those things that can serve a transformational role and help with growth and change over time. That is positive. But we also are in a position where we receive an annual funding line item that is subject to the legislative decision-making process, which is sensitive to economic concerns writ large. Our funding, the tobacco funds, are not necessarily the most stable source of funding. We have to watch very carefully and monitor the annual settlement. So there is a measure of uncertainty year over year with our funding, which is why we had to, Kim, you and I both joined the cabinet in our roles in early 2019, and we had some difficulties created by multi-year grant making prior to our arrival that took a year or two to unravel. It was an era where grants were made for a 3-year period, and then we had to go back due to funding shortfalls and cut grant awards, which I think to my way of thinking, if I'm running a program, that would be much harder to cope with than having to go through a process annually to reaffirm or apply for funding. Trying to bring together both the concerns about the burden of writing a grant application from scratch every year and balancing our need to monitor carefully how the money is being managed year over year. What we've experimented with is a process that Amy is set up to explore a little bit more with the presentation on our community-based child abuse prevention grants. But basically, what we can do is reduce the burden for existing grantees because they are established in our grant management platform. So they have a program profile. We have established things like the logic model used in their work and their goals and activities that they seek to do. So what we can do is utilize the common application platform tool to provide existing grantees their starting point. For the next round of applications, we can give them back what they turned in, what's on record with us, and ask them to update and refresh information. It gives them the opportunity to share with us new ideas for things they'd like to be doing in their program with our grant funding. It allows them to explore requests for budget increases if appropriate. They can describe the reasons why, so they can update and they can adjust what they want us to consider approving for them and insert that into what is then a competitive process with an RFP that is also open to programs that are not existing programs. Those new programs, if they choose to apply, would simply be starting from a brand new stage. So they would have to create their program profile, and they would have more information to gather than what existing grantees have to gather up. So it's reducing that administrative burden and helping streamline the process a bit. So it's consider it a fast track application for existing grantees. On the review and decision making side, it's still a competitive process. It's I don't want people out there who are not yet recipients of early childhood block grants to think there's no way. We should have more funding to work with next year. There will be room for competitive grant making, but it's also a nod to existing grantees that are doing great work that this cabinet is likely to choose to continue to support.
All right, appreciate your I'd be interested in any other cabinet members have a response to that. Anybody who's actually submitted a grant. I don't know. All right, no comments. I guess that sounds good. I don't think we have to take action. That's kind of an administrative issue, right, Melissa?
I would say so. I would be open to anyone's thoughts if you have questions or concerns. Now would be a great time to express them so we can factor them in. This is a grant process that won't actually open up until later in the year. So there's time if anyone would like us to think about any other aspects. I'd love to know that.
I'm not seeing anything. Let's move on.
Thank you.
Amy, now are you going to talk to us about child abuse prevention grant renewals?
Yes, good morning. Amy Meek, I'm a program director at the cabinet, and this is kind of a good segue. Every year at the August meeting, I bring you a recommendation about funding our CB-CAP grantees. The timing for this award is on the fiscal or on the federal fiscal year, which begins October 1st. So the cabinet doesn't meet again until the beginning of October. We don't usually get our award notice until quite late in the current year, usually right before the new award period starts. So generally we don't receive notice of that until September. So we don't know what our amount is going to be each year. It does fluctuate. We have had a little bit of an increase over the year, but we've remained around $1.3 million for the last few years. So it's hard to predict what we're going to get, but we do need to make awards to grantees before by October 1, pending a congressional budget action and formal award notice is received. So what we're recommending is that we do a renewal of the 6 community-based and 1 statewide grant. We've done a fast track award process with these grantees where they were able to go into the Common App portal, pull up their grant application from last year, and then give us any updates for their program, any changes in staffing or proposing, any changes to what they wanted to do. But for the most part, most of the grantees are asking just to continue with their programming. And we're recommending flat funding because of the uncertainty of what the award notice would be. And of course, in October, we should have some news for you at the next meeting on what we did receive, and we can give you an update on that. But asking for approval for us to move forward with some flat funding of these existing programs so that we can get something in place before the beginning of the start of the grant period. And on your screen is a list of those current grantees that you approved last year and the amount of funding.
So Amy, just to clarify, these people have already submitted the Fast Track app, or you're inviting them to based on these amounts? I didn't know.
We did go ahead and do that in June and July so that we had updated information. We needed to get something rolling, and so that was a way for us to try out that system. It worked really well, really smooth. They had their budget already uploaded in there from their previous grant, so they're able to transfer all their information, and really just we put in some questions for them to answer if there was any updates or programming changes. So it was pretty smooth, and we gave them a few weeks to do that, and no issues with how that came out, and they're still able to go in and access on their own whatever they submitted to us, and so it was a good process.
So Kim, this is Melissa. I would just clarify, we are betting on flat funding in this program. It isn't a huge amount of money from the federal side of things. And I think we are prepared to revisit where to go with it. If there is additional funding provided by the feds, we will address that as quickly as we can once we get our award notice. So this slate would be for, yeah, Lindsay, there's a technical issue. We're not seeing the full slide. The numbers are cut off. I don't know. Yeah, so maybe reload it.
If you could shrink the whole slide a little bit.
Yeah. I would say this is, I lost my train of thought.
Yep.
There we go. So with the cabinet, this is how we would handle it. If the cabinet chooses to approve this game plan, what we will issue are letters. They are not the formal grant award notices, the legal award notices, but it would be a letter notifying them of the cabinet decision pending federal budget approval, so that people can understand, this juncture in the funding cycle, what we are willing as a cabinet to give, provided the money arrives to us. So that's the ask today for the cabinet.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions or comments about that, or a motion? I think the motion would be to approve what's on the screen, subject to the receipt of federal funding, just as Melissa described.
This is Leetta. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thanks, Leetta. Is there a second?
This is Deanne. I'll second.
Thanks, Deanne. All right, now, any further discussion or questions? All right, I'm going to call roll here, so if you'll unmute accordingly. Senator Erickson.
Yes.
Leetta.
Yes.
Deanne.
Yes.
Delise.
Yes.
Monica.
Yes.
Terry Rice, I don't believe has joined us. Dr. Smith.
Yes.
And John isn't showing on my screen, so myself, I'll vote yes. So, all right. We have adopted that, and you can move forward, and we'll look for a report on the funding in October.
Thank you.
All right, Melissa, you want to talk to us about the Early Childhood Advisory Council?
I would love to. So we serve as the state lead, the designated Early Childhood Advisory Council for the state of Kansas, which is a requirement of federal Head Start legislation. The role and duties of the Advisory Council overlay with our Kansas statute role and responsibilities beautifully. So we are well equipped to carry that out. But we do have a recommendations panel that that we created in our role as the advisory council to bring in subject matter experts and certain people who inhabit positions that are a requirement of the federal law. So this group serves as an advisory group to us in our capacity as the State Early Childhood Advisory Council. We, at our June meeting, approved a fresh slate of members. Some are returning and some are brand new. That group held its first meeting on July 15th. The panel meets on the third Friday morning of the month to take care of their business. So those are 9 a.m. meetings, which are public meetings broadcast on YouTube for anyone who wishes to participate, to observe. The meeting really was just an orientation and introductory meeting. We got to know each other and reviewed the role of the panel and potential ideas for projects for them to work on in the coming year. So we will have a more detailed update when there is more business coming from the panel for the advisory council's consideration. But I am excited about the potential that exists to harness the knowledge and the talents of the panel members in the coming year under the leadership of the chair who has taken on the role, Cornelia Stevens from the Opportunity Project in Wichita. What I envision is that we will have the panel engage in some of the work that is needed as we develop and roll out some new tools that our preschool development grants has been funding and other sources of federal funds pertaining to workforce support and development, so that we can help ensure smooth implementation as those things become ready to roll out to the community of providers in the field.
Okay.
So that's really all we had for this meeting.
How are we staffing that?
So we have a couple staff members from the cabinet staff support. Hannah McGahey has offered to help serve as the coordinator in the hopefully the short term. Debbie Deere was doing that for the first 2 years of the panel, and she left us for another position in May. But we're not yet. There's going to be a little bit of a reorg in terms of roles and responsibilities. So I've held off opening the position up, but there will be a position posted coming soon. And in the meantime, Hannah is serving Debbie's role and responsibilities to help facilitate the meetings. Megan Broha from our team is the technical support who opens up the Zoom room and helps take notes and do all of those things that help ensure we have accurate minutes and agendas and materials and so she's helping handle the preparation of all of that. And then, as always, that we are fortunate to have backbone support provided from our team from KU CPPR.
Thank you. All right, believe that's no action required there. So let's move on to the preschool development grant.
I touched on a couple of the items relevant to the work the panel will have. We've got a few big projects that are rolling. I will say the focus and attention of cabinet staff and my thanks to Dioga for the work that is required of her to produce the financial reporting. So in the month of July, we were on a reporting cycle to the federal program to provide both an annual performance report and an annual financial report for the second year of the preschool development grant renewal. That you can see the date range on screen. It began April 30th, 2021 and cycles to a close April 29th, 2022. They give us a 90-day liquidation period to pay the bills, and then we are responsible for the annual report. But at the same time, we're in year 3, which began April 30th of 22, and we are always responsible for a quarterly report for each year of the grant. So we essentially had 4 different reports to submit in July, and we managed to get everything submitted 2 days ahead of schedule, which made me very happy and proud of the work the team on the cabinet does. The support team from KU helps us with the program report, that evaluation. Administration for Children and Families puts out the criteria that they're looking for. It changed between year 1 and year 2. We had an entirely different type of report to submit. And it's a really detailed process. So our thanks to Chris Tilden and his team for the support they gave to that. Our workforce registry RFP closed June 8th. The review team did their work to review the applications received. We've got 3 contenders. There was a bit of a delay waiting on the procurement team at Department of Administration to schedule demonstrations for each of the 3 vendors. Those are set to take place over the next 10 days. And once each vendor has had their opportunity to demonstrate what their proposal can do and answer a set of questions that have been prepared for them, we are prepared to make the awards. So my hope and anticipation is that once the demonstration period ends, the process moves along a little more quickly and we get our contract awarded. The workforce registry will serve the workforce in childcare. It will help them track their own licensing credentials and professional development work. It will work in concert with the career pathway that's in development to roll out in tandem, which will help childcare professionals determine for themselves what path they choose to make progress through the progression. It's part of improving quality in all of our programs. And then I know DCF is also hard at work with the rollout of enhanced links to quality system along the same timeline. So that's where I think there will be work for the panel to help advise on smooth rollout of all of those tools. Beyond that, PDG, this is the final year of the grant, so we are excited about being able to bring certain projects to fruition. We are heavily engaged in conversations around sustainability of the work and how we will keep certain programs going that really and truly are bringing high value to our system. So we've got better coordination and navigation of the system for the families involved with it. There's still room to improve that. So we want to hold on to some of the strategies and some of the people that are doing that work. And then some of the great progress made with tools like 1-800-CHILDREN, enhanced toolkit for resource navigation will need annual maintenance. It always did, but there is a set of tools in that toolkit that need maintenance. So we are engaged in talks with the agency partners on all of that. Lindsay, I don't have the slide in front of me, but I think that about covers preschool development grants, and we can hear from agencies and hear their updates. Kim, I think this will be
Okay. All
the
right.
right time. Lindsay, we're just seeing a black screen.
Is it still not coming through? Amanda had messaged me. I'm not sure what's happening, that it's not showing.
Well, we can wing it. We can help. Why don't we start with Amy's update on behalf of the cabinet, and then Amanda, you can plan to be next, and then you can tag the next person behind you.
Okay, Amy?
Amy Meek again, and we'll have to see if this is going to work, but I was excited to show you a video that we've been working on with our Thriving Family Safer Children team in Kansas. It includes some of our partners that are here on the call, Amanda and Tanya and Kelly. So on behalf of the team, I wanted to show you some of our messaging that we've been working on. It includes a short video and some other information and materials that you can find on our website, ksthrivingfamilies.org. And we're really excited to have some messaging for this project that we've been working on, and hoping to do some more videos and figure out a really strong dissemination plan as well of how we can share the message. So I'm not sure if Lindsay, if you're able to.
Are you still seeing a black screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me leave the meeting and come back. It's showing up on my side, so I'm not sure what has happened, but let me leave and come back. Melissa, you're a co-host. I sincerely apologize. If that doesn't work quickly, then I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can come back. We can come back to showing the video after everyone else gives updates as well. The only other update I had is about our CBCAP grantees. We're wrapping up the year and going to be holding a couple sessions with our backbone support, KU. We'll be doing those. And we're doing something new. It's going to be 2 sessions of 2 hours each, and it's called ripple effects mapping. And it's a participatory, engaging exercise with our grantees to gain more insight into the programming and what they have experienced during the year. And it's going to be an addition to our program evaluation. So looking forward to doing those in September with our grantees and engaging with them. And it'll be a good way to wrap up our year with them, and then also kick off the year and maybe give us some ideas of things that we can do in the coming year as well. So, oh, great. Okay, I'll let her.
Is it working now?
I see. Yep, I see it.
My blood pressure went really high.
Sorry.
All right, let me see if this video will share. Thank you for your patience.
Mm-hmm.
How do we help Kansas families thrive? When we recognize that all families need help sometimes, and when we work as a community to ensure that families have the resources they need when they need them, we make it more likely that families can avoid reaching a crisis point. Helping families already in crisis is much more difficult and expensive than simply giving Kansans a boost when they need it. When we work alongside parents and young adults who have been through our child welfare and foster care systems and learn from their experiences, we better understand that the responsibility of raising healthy children does not solely fall on parents and caregivers. When we invest in well-being, fewer families are separated, and more children are helped in their own homes, free from harm. Strengthening Kansas families in this way means that communities can do more than just meet basic needs, and families can do more than just get by. In a child and family well-being system, Kansas families thrive.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, so we're really excited. I hope that you'll be seeing that video and other platforms and other groups, and probably on some social media as well. And I'll give you the website again. It's ksthrivingfamilies.org if you'd like to visit and have access to the video or any of our other materials. We'll be updating that as we have more messaging tools for our kit as well. That's all.
Sorry, I didn't get unmuted. Any questions for Amy? All right, well, thank you. Amanda, you got your tag.
Terrific. And I'll be handing it off to Kelly for an update from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment when I'm done. Hi, everybody. This is Amanda Peterson again from the Kansas State Department of Education. I've got 2 pieces to share. The first, I've had the chance to hear Dr. Watson speak a few times in the last couple of weeks, and he's reminded both our staff and other audiences that in the next several weeks, nearly 500,000 students in Kansas will begin the 2022-2023 school year. And that gives us just a real incredible opportunity to be able to support those students and be able to kick off a great school year. And so we've had the chance to be able to work with new educators and new leaders as they step into new roles. Our team in particular is very focused on the 40,000 or so children who will be beginning kindergarten for the first time this upcoming school year. And we've been doing a lot of work. As you probably noticed earlier, we're very currently technically deep in the weeds on working with the kindergarten readiness snapshot, making sure that people have the logins and the technical pieces that they need so that schools can really effectively partner with families and develop strong relationships to begin kindergarten in a smooth way at the start of the school year. As I've mentioned before, this in response to feedback, we did give schools the option, if they would like, to integrate the kindergarten readiness snapshot for this upcoming school year into their springtime activities. So many schools do some kind of springtime orientation for students of incoming kindergartners to be able to help begin preparing for that really important transition. And we also have a number of other schools who use the summertime as an opportunity for summer learning activities for incoming kindergarten students. And so we had heard from schools that it would be really helpful to begin doing the ASQ, the kindergarten readiness snapshot, earlier, right when they're beginning those relationships with families. And we continue to receive really positive feedback from that flexibility for schools to be doing that much earlier in the year. So we'll continue to do that for the coming weeks and months. And as a reminder, September 20th is our count day for where we are able to get the first snapshot of enrollment for the 2022-2023 school year. That data is finalized in mid-October. And so we are looking forward to that as we continue to monitor the impact of the pandemic on enrollment for our preschool and kindergarten students. The second piece that I want to share today is that at the July meeting, the Kansas State Board of Education approved their recommendations for the annual state budget process. That then goes to the division of the budget and then to the governor's office as they work on the budget that will be introduced at the beginning of the 2023 legislative session for the fiscal year that begins next July. As part of that, there were a few pieces that were especially relevant to early childhood programs. First, the state board approved a recommendation for a 5-year phase-in for special education state aid, which would cost approximately an additional $76.8 million a year for 5 years. That would eventually mean that the state would be contributing 92% of excess costs, which is the statutory requirement for what the state should be funding to support the excess costs of providing special education. That's really important for the perspective of early learning, because we know that many districts are using local funds and state funds to be able to fill that shortfall. And should the state increase funding for special education, we would anticipate that districts would have more funding available to do things like invest in early childhood programming. The other two pieces are especially important, I think, for this group. The State Board of Education approved the recommendations that the cabinet made for the 2 line items that fund early learning programs. So both the additional funding recommended for the Kansas Parents as Teachers grants and the continued funding of the Kansas preschool pilot at the current level from the Children's Initiatives Fund. We also had some discussion with the State Board of Education about what it might look like for the Kansas preschool pilot to move from a pilot phase to full implementation. And we discussed that some of those options in the school finance formula could include things like fully funding children who are attending full day programs instead of capping those at 0.5 FTE for each of those students, and also expanding the number of preschool students who are served to include perhaps students whose incomes would qualify them for reduced price lunch or by removing eligibility criteria. So I'd expect that those conversations will continue. And if there are no questions for me, I'm glad to turn it over to Kelly.
Okay, before I let Kelly kick off here, Dina, I just wanted to let you know you're not forgotten. We will call on you. So, all right, Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Kelly Mark from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. I have a few quick updates from KDHE. Our RFP for our expanded universal home visiting model is almost ready and ready to go over to the Department of Administration. So we're excited about that, ramping that model up for its expansion, thanks to the cabinet. We have hired a child and adolescent health consultant. That position has been vacant for quite a bit, so we're excited to get that filled. That person is going to allow us to move on some of these child and adolescent initiatives in our state action plan that we haven't been able to move on in the last couple of years. Our childcare licensing director position is vacant right now. It is posted, so we are recruiting for that and hopeful to get someone in that position very soon. I'm creating a new position within our early care system here at KDHE, an early childhood systems coordinator that's really going to help. KDHE is a partner in all of this large systems work, the registry, the career pathway, the bonuses, all those things. And I want a person that's really dedicated to that work for KDHE that can serve in that role and be our liaison and ensure that our work is aligned with everything that's happening around the state and with the other state agencies. So pretty excited about that. We continue to work on our childcare licensing review and amendment process. And as I said, we're partnering in all the systems work and always glad to be a partner with that. Melissa is going to come visit our state home visiting work group coming up in August, the meeting coming up in August, to talk with them about the recommendation from the cabinet about sustainability and alignment and home visiting in Kansas. So we're excited to have her come speak with the group and see what kind of recommendations they can make. And I'll stand for questions.
Okay, anything for Kelly? Appreciate that report. All right, Tanya.
Hi, everybody. Tanya Keys, Department for Children and Families. I have 3 updates for you. The first update is August will be a month for us that we will be having 6 stakeholder meetings in the communities. The stakeholder meetings in communities are related to some language in the omnibus budget bill that the agency conducts stakeholder meetings specifically around early intervention, prevention, and foster care performance-based contracts. So we're going to be engaging really just some nice dialogue, and we'll be doing a lot of listening in those meetings. But the subject of those meetings is pretty specific to performance-based contracts and opportunities we would have with those 3 programs. Those are happening, they start next week, and they're happening in Kansas City, Emporia, Topeka, Pittsburgh, Hayes, and Wichita. So hopefully some of you have heard about those. You may have been invited locally by the regional directors. That's where those invitations would have come from. So we'll look forward to August. Ultimately, the product of those meetings will appear in a report to the legislature in January. So we're kind of just getting a head start on that work. The second update is DCF was able to find some time-limited federal funds, and we're excited. We have a request for proposal out for local sites of a family resource center. It's really great that we got to see that video about investment in well-being, and local family resource centers are a hub in a community or a neighborhood that provide access to resources, parental supports, and parent leadership for families and a variety of services. They might involve a number of different providers or supports for a family, and they can go there. They're open to all families. Let's see, the questions and answers, if folks have questions on the RFP, I think they're due August 15th, but the bids are due September 16th. So that is in process for us. Again, that's a request for local sites of a family resource center. The third update I have is just a reminder that this month ends the request for proposal period for our Family First grants. So we're in the midst of that as well. So I think those are my 3 updates, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. Any questions or comments related to Tanya or DCF? All right. I guess you got off on that one, Tanya. Thank you. Appreciate it. Carla.
Good morning. Carla Wiscombe from the Kansas Board of Regents. I can't remember if I discussed the system-wide gen ed package at our June meeting. I had to leave at one of the meetings early. But this is an exciting accomplishment for the state of Kansas, that all of our public institutions will have the same general education framework. It will go into effect fall of 24. So that would be the academic year 24-25. And the package contains 34 to 35 credit hours that students, it's guaranteed to meet the gen ed package at all of our institutions. So we're very excited about that. The board held their retreat last week. And so at the September meeting, many of us will get new projects or task initiatives that are related to the board goals. We have a joint meeting with the Kansas State Board of Education in September. This is the third year that they've met together in September for a half a day, just to kind of keep each other updated and collaborate on different projects and different things that we're doing. So that is what I have for the Board of Regents, and I will answer any questions, hopefully, that you have.
All right, anything for Carla? It probably, when we put these at the end of the meeting, it probably cuts off the questions some for everybody.
That's a good thing, I guess, right?
Yes, it may be or may not, I don't know. So I think we're welcoming today Dina Russell, and your last name is escaping me, Marconian?
Marino.
All right, Marino, there we are, Dina, sorry. And I believe you're involved with Citizens Review Boards and CASA programs, and you're helping us out today from the Judicial Department. So Dina, what do you have for us?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here on behalf of Justice Wall. I wanted to give a brief update on what we're doing at the Office of Judicial Administration. This summer, we have our second Best Practice in Child Welfare Law training for the year that will occur on August 24th and 25th via Zoom. And that is open to all stakeholders in the child welfare arena. The registration is open now, and I've posted the link to registration in the chat if anyone's interested. We'll be talking about procedural fairness and termination of parental rights. We also are hosting a training for judges only this fall. It's a 6-part training on child need of care cases. We're calling that the SYNC, Child Need of Care Nuts and Bolts training. This is for new judges or judges new to the child need of care bench, or someone maybe who's been on it a while but just wants a refresher in best practice. So that's open to judges only, and we're really excited about that. We are also planning another training, lots of trainings at the branch, and this one is for juvenile justice stakeholders. We have a tentative date of November 30th from 10 a.m. to noon. And this one will cover toxic stress, child trauma, and the way that those things impact youth who are involved in the juvenile justice system. And that registration will be open within the coming months, and we'll send that out to everyone. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Well, sound like good opportunities. Glad you're getting focused on that. Appreciate it. Or continuing your focus. I'm sure you've always been. Anyway, welcome. Thank you for doing that today. All right. Well, we've heard from everybody else. Melissa, I guess you have a period of free time here to update us.
Kim, I just wanted to draw attention to a program. It isn't ours, but I do want to acknowledge the work that the Department of Education has been doing on a program called Sunflower Summer that began last year with pandemic relief funding and continues this year. It is a program that the team at CPPR and particular kudos to Janine Haran on their team for developing the game plan to help create an enrichment program for the summer months to help families engage in their community with their children and in educational experiences. The program's called Sunflower Summer, and as of Sunday, July 31st, there have been 152,000 plus Kansans who have utilized the program to visit venues. I think there's over 90 venues in the state that are participating, and basically the relief funding helps cover it's underwriting the costs, the entry fee for children and their parents to enter different sites around the state. So it has been a boon for children and their families to get out and experience the all that Kansas has to offer. it has in the 2.0 iteration, we have engaged the department wrapped teachers in to help with the experiential learning on site. So we've had some really cool things happening in the Sunflower Summer program. It will come to an end. With school starting August 15th, I think we're in the final week of the program, but it is an app that can be downloaded through either the Apple or the Google app stores. And there is still time left this weekend for families to get out and enjoy. So I just wanted to lift that up because it is one of those things that has just been a source of a lot of joy across the state. And it helps as a boost to tourism. And families are out traveling and need to eat lunch and dinner and potentially stay the night. And those things help our local communities. Beyond that, I would say we will enter fall with a full agenda here at the cabinet. We are in high gear with not just the preschool development grants, the life cycle of the CB-CAP program cycles in the fall, are prepping for the new round of early childhood block grant making, helping facilitate all of the technical support that the cabinet offers to the grantees receiving our programs, and helping participate in some continuing work that is funded by other potential federal funding streams. So trying to bring it all together and coordinate efforts among the various partners is work that keeps us very busy. Kim, I just want to take a moment to address the fact that we thought we would be in person this month and had to make a decision this week to pivot to the virtual meeting. I think our October meeting, we are definitely planning to hold virtually. This cabinet has talked about potentially meeting in person in December. We will hold the physical space to do that, but let's hold off on decision making till October, when we get a sense of where we are and what the will of the cabinet might be. We just ended up with COVID affecting some staffing. We had cabinet members needing to be out of town. So thank you to those of you who took the time from other responsibilities that you have to make 2 hours of your morning available to us for the Children's Cabinet. And I would encourage all of you, we are here at the cabinet to help answer any interim questions that you might have. Dr. Smith, I would say that the Early Childhood Block Grant report really lays out the data that we collect. If you continue to have more specific questions for us, I welcome those and would be happy to work to bring any additional insight to bear, so that there's clear understanding of the role and the manner in which we use data here at the Children's Cabinet.
I'm very happy to help support that. Please just let me know what information you need for me to help assist with reviewing.
Thank you. So Kim, that's all I have today. There's the meeting schedule. October 7th at 9 a.m. will be our next meeting. It will be held virtually for sure. And the final meeting of the year, when we receive our annual reports, or I will present the annual report to the cabinet for approval prior to conveying that on to the governor to fulfill our responsibilities, will be December 2nd. So if there are any final questions for me, I'm happy to entertain them. Otherwise, Kim, I turn it back to you to close.
Hey, this is Lietta, and thank you, Melissa and Kim, for a great meeting. I'm sorry I was a little late. I'm in Seattle and had technical issues. Did I miss the Dolly Parton slate of the council? Was that?
Yes. We approved it.
Awesome.
I check your email because I did send a document this morning. It shows the slate. We do have a slide that has the membership, but if you don't see the email, give me a call. And this will all be posted publicly on our website as well.
Oh, I'm so excited about that program, in addition to everything we talked about. But however we can help as a cabinet, let us know. And I think we may all need that Dolly Parton stand up for our offices. So thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Leetta. I don't have anything else. I guess just on a personal note, that Sunflower Summer ended up last summer. My then 9 and 12-year-old grandsons participated in that and went to the state capitol, which I'm not sure was even part of the tour, but they were doing other things. They went to the state capitol, and we've now been to Texas and Illinois because they enjoy going to state capitol. So it's been very important to our family. So anyway,
awesome.
All right, anything else? I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
This is Delise, so moved.
Thanks, Delise.
Leetta, second.
Deanne seconded, Leetta seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, I heard all opposed. I don't even think you actually called for that. But anyway, it was unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your participation. We'll see you in October.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.